The first rays of artificial dawn filtered through the massive reinforced glass dome of New Aqualis, casting rippling shadows across Marina Tran's apartment. She watched as schools of luminescent fish darted past her window, their bodies creating streaks of blue-green light against the dark ocean beyond. It was 2087, and this had been her morning view for the past 3 years, since accepting the position as New Aqualis's leading hydrologist and marine architect. As she sipped her synthetic coffee, Marina contemplated the world above. Most of the coastal cities she had known as a child were now underwater museums or abandoned ruins. The rapid polar ice melt had accelerated beyond even the most pessimistic predictions, leaving humanity with 2 choices: retreat inland or adapt. New Aqualis represented the boldest of those adaptations, humanity's first deep-sea metropolitan settlement. "Good morning, Dr. Tran." The apartment's AI assistant chimed. "Current depth is stable at 1,200 meters. External pressure readings normal. Module temperature at optimal 22 degrees Celsius." Marina nodded absently. The statistics were part of her daily routine, a reminder of the fragile balance they maintained in this pioneering underwater city. New Aqualis housed nearly 15,000 residents within its interconnected high-pressure modules and transparent observation domes. Abyss-Tech Corporation had designed it as a proof of concept, a template for future underwater habitation as more land disappeared beneath rising seas. "Any messages?" Marina asked, sliding into her uniform, a sleek, pressure-resistant suit emblazoned with the city's emblem, a stylized city skyline encased in a water droplet. "2 priority alerts from Central Command. Director Isohara has called an emergency meeting at 0800 hours. Also, there appears to be an anomaly in the northern residential module's pressure readings." Marina's relaxed demeanor instantly transformed. Pressure anomalies were never trivial at these depths. She quickly gathered her equipment and headed for the transit tube that would take her to Central Command. The transit capsule moved swiftly through the clear tubes connecting the city's modules, offering breathtaking views of the ocean ecosystem that had flourished around their artificial structures. Coral had been transplanted onto specially designed attachment points, creating vibrant gardens that attracted diverse marine life. It was a successful symbiosis that Marina had helped design, a rare example of humans enhancing rather than destroying their environment. As the capsule approached Central Command, Marina noticed unusual activity. Emergency response teams were mobilizing, and security personnel were directing residents away from the northern section's access points. Her concern deepened. The doors to the command center slid open to reveal a scene of controlled chaos. At the center of it all stood Helena Isohara, the imposing director of Abyss-Tech operations in New Aqualis. Her immaculately styled silver hair and tailored deep blue uniform projected authority. But Marina noticed the tension in her normally composed features. "Dr. Tran, finally," Isohara said, gesturing toward the main monitoring station. "We've lost contact with Northern Residential Module 7. Pressure sensors registered dangerous fluctuations before communications went dark 30 minutes ago." Marina moved quickly to the displays, scanning the data streams. "How many residents?" 87, replied a voice behind her. Marina turned to see Leon Patel, the city's chief engineering officer. His normally cheerful expression was replaced by professional concern. Mostly researchers and their families. "Show me the last sensor readings," Marina demanded, and the holographic display expanded to reveal a troubling pattern. "These aren't random fluctuations. The pressure increased in a controlled pattern before the spike that caused the communication failure." "What are you suggesting, Dr. Tran?" Isohara's voice had an edge to it. "I'm not suggesting anything yet," Marina replied carefully. "But this doesn't match any natural phenomenon I've encountered. We need to send a rescue team immediately." Isohara hesitated, her eyes flickering to the corporate representatives who stood at the periphery of the command center. Protocol dictates that we conduct a full remote diagnostic before risking personnel. Marina stepped closer, lowering her voice. With all due respect, Director, there are families in that module. If the integrity is compromised, they have less than 3 hours of emergency oxygen in their isolation chambers. A tense silence followed, broken when Leon joined them. I've prepared the rescue submersible. We can depart in 10 minutes. Isohara's jaw tightened, but she nodded curtly. Very well. Dr. Tran, you will lead the mission. Engineer Patel, assemble your team. But be clear, this is a rescue operation only. No unnecessary risks. As Marina and Leon left to prepare, they exchanged meaningful glances. Both had worked at New Aqualis long enough to recognize when corporate interests were influencing decisions. Abyss-Tech had invested billions in proving that underwater habitation was safe and viable. An incident now could jeopardize not only their reputation, but future funding. She seemed reluctant, Leon murmured as they boarded the internal shuttle to the submersible bay. Wouldn't you be? A successful evacuation means admitting a failure in their supposedly perfect system, Marina replied. But something doesn't add up. Those pressure readings weren't random. The rescue submersible was a sleek vessel, designed to navigate between the city's modules and into the open ocean if necessary. As Marina took the pilot's seat, Dr. Elena Cruz, the medical team leader, joined them with her emergency supplies. Status on the module? Elena asked, securing her equipment. Still dark, Leon replied from the engineering station. But environmental sensors nearby are detecting microbubbles in the water. Possible sign of a leak. Marina initiated the departure sequence, and the submersible detached from its docking bay. Through the viewports, they watched as New Aqualis's gleaming structures receded behind them. The northern module complex came into view, a cluster of cylindrical habitats connected by reinforced tubes. Now ominously dark, except for the flashing of emergency beacons. Approaching docking port, Marina announced, carefully maneuvering the submersible. Unusual current patterns here. Leon frowned at his instruments. Ocean currents shouldn't be this strong at this depth and this close to the structures. Something's disrupting the normal flow. As they neared the module, their external lights illuminated a terrifying sight. A section of the module's outer hull had buckled inward, and a small but steady stream of bubbles was escaping from a breach near one of the emergency hatches. Structural integrity at 62%, Leon reported, his voice tense. That's well below safety parameters. Marina made a quick decision. We can't dock directly. Too risky. Elena, prepare for external approach. We'll need to use the emergency pressure suits. They donned the specialized deep-sea suits designed to withstand the crushing pressure of the ocean at this depth. Each suit was equipped with 4 hours of oxygen, communication systems, and basic tools. As the airlock cycled, Marina mentally prepared herself for the dangerous environment they were about to enter. The ocean, at 200 meters, was a different world. Despite their powerful lights, visibility extended only a few meters in the murky water. The cold was immediate and penetrating, even through their insulated suits. Marina activated her helmet lights and signaled for the team to follow her toward the damaged section. Stay close, she instructed through the comm system. The currents are unpredictable here. As they approached the damaged module, Marina noticed something unusual about the breach. The metal wasn't just buckled from external pressure. There were clear signs of an internal force having pushed outward. Leon, look at this, she said, directing her light at the torn metal edges. This damage originated from inside. Leon examined the breach carefully. You're right. This wasn't a pressure failure. Something caused an explosion or sudden release of pressure from within. Marina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the frigid water. We need to get inside, now. They located an emergency access hatch that was still intact and activated the manual override. The hatch reluctantly slid open, allowing them to enter a small decompression chamber. Once inside, they sealed the external door and began the process of draining the seawater and equalizing pressure. "Life signs detected," Elena reported, checking her scanner. "Multiple readings, but they're faint. The residents must be in the emergency pressure shelters." When the chamber finished cycling, they removed their helmets, but kept their suits on. The module's interior was in disarray, with furniture and personal belongings scattered by the explosive decompression that had occurred. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow over everything. "This way," Marina directed, following her scanner toward the central hub where the emergency shelters were located. They found the residents huddled in 3 large pressure shelters, reinforced rooms designed to maintain integrity, even if the main module failed. Pale faces looked up as Marina overrode the shelter locks. Children clung to parents, and researchers still clutched their tablets or lab equipment they'd grabbed during evacuation. "Medical team from New Aqualis," Elena announced, immediately moving to check the most vulnerable residents. "Everyone stay calm. We're here to evacuate you." While Elena assessed the residents, Marina and Leon investigated the module's control center. The damage was worse here. Control panels were shattered, and a large section of the wall had been blown outward. "Look at this," Leon said, pointing to a partially melted control panel. "The primary pressure regulation valve. It's been manually overridden." Marina examined the controls closely. "Not just overridden, sabotaged. Someone deliberately released the pressure containment." "Why would anyone do that?" Leon whispered, glancing back toward the shelters where the residents were being prepared for evacuation. "I don't know," Marina replied, "but I intend to find out." The evacuation proceeded methodically. The rescue submersible could only transport 20 people at a time, so they prioritized children, the elderly, and those with injuries. Captain Rourke, who commanded the surface rescue vessel, coordinated with them to ensure a smooth operation. "Final group is aboard," Marina reported after the 3rd trip. "Leon and I will remain to secure the module and retrieve the sensor data." "Be quick," Rourke responded over the comm. "Barometric readings show a storm system moving in above. It could create dangerous currents at your depth." Left alone in the damaged module, Marina and Leon worked quickly to download the environmental logs and security footage. As Marina scrolled through the data, a disturbing pattern emerged. "Leon, look at this," she called. The pressure regulation system had been subtly modified over several weeks, with small adjustments that wouldn't trigger alarms, but gradually stressed the structural integrity. This wasn't a spontaneous failure, or a single act of sabotage. It was planned. Leon's expression darkened as he reviewed the evidence. "Who would have the expertise and access to do this?" "Someone with high-level clearance and intimate knowledge of our systems," Marina said, her mind already racing through possibilities. "We need to get this data back to Central Command immediately." As they prepared to leave, a sudden, violent tremor shook the module. Warning lights flashed as a computerized voice announced, "Warning, structural integrity compromised. Imminent failure predicted. Evacuate immediately." "The storm must be affecting the currents," Leon shouted over the groaning of metal. "We need to move now." They barely made it to their submersible before another stronger tremor rocked the module. Through the viewport, they watched in horror as the weakened structure finally gave way, imploding with frightening speed as the ocean reclaimed the space. "That was too close," Marina breathed as they pulled away from the collapsing structure. "And too convenient." By the time they returned to New Aqualis, news of the incident had spread. Concerned residents gathered in common areas, sharing information and rumors. Marina noted the fear in their expressions. The illusion of perfect safety had been shattered. Director Isohara was waiting when they docked, flanked by security personnel and corporate representatives. Her expression was unreadable as Marina approached with the recovered data. "All residents evacuated safely," Marina reported formally. "The module has been lost." A regrettable incident, Isohara replied. I trust you retrieved the relevant data for our investigation. Marina hesitated, suddenly reluctant to hand over the evidence. I did, and it shows a disturbing pattern of deliberate sabotage. Isohara's expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. That's a serious accusation, Dr. Tran, one that could cause unnecessary panic. The data should be analyzed by our security team before any conclusions are drawn. With all due respect, Director, this concerns the safety of everyone in New Aqualis. I believe transparency is essential. Your concern is noted, Isohara said coldly. But Abyss-Tech protocol is clear. All incident data is classified until officially reviewed. Please surrender the data module. The security personnel stepped forward. Marina reluctantly handed over the physical data storage, but said nothing about the backup copy she had discreetly transferred to her personal device. That night, Marina couldn't sleep. The evacuees had been temporarily housed in the city's central dome, and the official story was that a previously undetected fault in the module's construction had led to the failure. No mention of sabotage or the manipulated pressure readings. She contacted Leon securely, and they agreed to meet in his engineering lab during the night shift when fewer people would be around. I've been reviewing the backup data, Leon said when they were alone in his lab. It's worse than we thought. Look at this. He displayed a sequence of security clearances used to access the pressure regulation systems. Most were authorized maintenance checks, but several showed the credentials of someone with director-level access. This can't be right, Marina murmured, leaning closer. These modifications were approved at the highest level. That's not all, Leon continued, pulling up another file. I found partial communications between Abyss-Tech headquarters and Director Isohara. They're discussing something called Phase 2 relocation. Marina felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. The Northern Module residents. They were primarily independent researchers not directly employed by Abyss-Tech. And the next scheduled modification would have affected the Eastern Module. Also, mostly independent contractors and their families. Leon added grimly. They're forcing relocations, Marina concluded, creating accidents to justify moving people. But why? They didn't have to wait long for an answer. The next morning, an announcement was broadcast throughout New Aqualis. Due to safety concerns, all residential modules would undergo comprehensive inspections. During this process, residents would be temporarily relocated to Abyss-Tech-controlled housing units. Independent research would be suspended until further notice. Marina watched the residents' reactions in the common area. Confusion, concern, but also resignation. They had little choice. There was nowhere else to go at this depth. She was returning to her quarters when she noticed something unusual, a thin mist escaping from a ventilation duct. Her training immediately registered the danger. Gas leak. She activated her emergency communicator. Warning, possible toxic gas leak in residential section 3. Initiating evacuation protocols. Alarms blared as residents hurried to safety. Emergency response teams arrived quickly, but Marina had already traced the leak to its source. Another pressure regulation valve that had been remotely adjusted. This is deliberate, she told Elena, who had arrived with the medical team to check affected residents. Someone is accelerating the relocation plan. You think Abyss-Tech is behind this? Elena asked incredulously. I don't know who's giving the orders, Marina replied, but I know who has the authority to stop it. Marina headed directly to Isohara's office, bypassing security protocols with her emergency override. The director was in a video conference with Abyss-Tech executives, but looked up sharply when Marina entered. This meeting is classified, Dr. Tran, she said coldly. Security will escort you out. Another module has been compromised, Marina announced, ignoring the threat. More accidents to force relocations. I know about Phase 2. The executives on the screen exchanged glances before the feed was abruptly cut. Isohara rose slowly from her desk. You've misunderstood the situation, she said carefully. Phase 2 is a necessary restructuring to ensure optimal safety. By endangering lives, by sabotaging perfectly functional modules, by consolidating our vulnerable population into better protected central modules, Isohara countered. The outlying modules were always meant to be temporary. We're simply accelerating the timeline. Without informing residents, without their consent. Isohara's professional veneer cracked slightly. Do you think panic is helpful? The surface world is drowning. Dr. Tran, more refugees arrive every month seeking shelter. We need those outer modules for expansion, for research that will ensure humanity's survival underwater. There are other ways, Marina insisted. Transparent ways that don't risk lives. Idealism is a luxury we can no longer afford, Isohara snapped. Abyss-Tech built this city. We decide how it operates. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. More modules were reporting pressure anomalies and gas leaks. The situation was escalating beyond anyone's control. What have you done? Marina demanded. For the first time, Isohara looked genuinely alarmed. This isn't authorized. The timeline was supposed to be gradual, controlled. They rushed to Central Command, where chaos had erupted. Multiple systems were failing simultaneously, and panic was spreading throughout the city. Status report! Isohara barked at the technicians. Multiple pressure regulation systems have been compromised, one reported. It's as if someone activated all the protocols at once. Marina suddenly understood. It's the automated system. Once the initial sabotage protocols were entered, the AI continued the pattern across all similar modules. Can we stop it? Isohara demanded. Leon, who had joined them in the command center, shook his head. Not remotely. The central control hub is located in the Abyss-Tech core at the city's center. We'd need to manually override the system there. Then that's where we're going, Marina decided. The journey to the city's core was harrowing. Several transit tubes had been sealed due to pressure concerns, forcing them to take alternative routes through maintenance corridors. Residents were being evacuated to emergency shelters, creating congestion and confusion everywhere. We have less than 30 minutes before critical failure in the affected modules, Leon reported as they hurried through a narrow utility passage. After that, the structural damage will be irreversible. They reached the heavily secured Abyss-Tech Control Center, only to find it locked down under emergency protocols. Isohara's authority was sufficient to grant them access, but what they found inside was unexpected. The control center was largely automated, with only a skeleton crew of technicians who looked surprised by their arrival. At the center of the room stood a massive holographic display showing New Aqualis's systems, many of which were now flashing red. Director Isohara, one of the technicians acknowledged, "We've been trying to contact you. The automated restructuring protocol has malfunctioned." "Shut it down," Isohara ordered. "We can't. Ma'am. The system is following authorized executive protocols. It's registered as a Priority 1 directive from headquarters." Marina pushed forward to examine the control interface. "Show me the original authorization." The technician brought up the command log, revealing what Marina had suspected. The sabotage had indeed been authorized by Abyss-Tech headquarters. But something had gone wrong with the implementation. The system is interpreting the gradual relocation protocol as an immediate evacuation order, Marina explained. It's creating intentional failures in all outlying modules simultaneously. "Override it," Isohara demanded. "The only override requires physical access to the central server," the technician replied helplessly. "It's in the pressure chamber below this level." Marina and Leon exchanged glances. "I'll go," Marina volunteered. "The pressure chamber operates at deep ocean pressure," the technician warned. "It's not designed for human entry." "I'll use a deep-sea suit," Marina insisted. "Just give me access." Reluctantly, Isohara authorized the dangerous mission. Marina donned one of the emergency pressure suits, while Leon prepared the override codes she would need to input manually. "The suit will protect you for 15 minutes at most in those conditions," he warned her. "After that, the pressure will begin to affect even reinforced materials." "Then I'll work quickly," Marina replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The pressure chamber was accessed through a specialized airlock. As Marina stepped inside, and the outer door sealed behind her, she took a deep breath. The inner door opened to reveal a cavernous room filled with the central server banks that controlled New Aqualis's vital systems. The air pressure here was gradually increasing to match deep ocean conditions, a security measure designed to make unauthorized access nearly impossible. Marina moved as quickly as the increasingly resistant air would allow. Each step became more difficult as the pressure mounted. Following Leon's instructions through her comlink, she located the primary control node. "I'm at the main terminal," she reported, her breathing labored. "Beginning manual override." Her gloved fingers moved across the interface, inputting the complex sequence Leon had provided. Warning messages flashed across the screen as the system resisted the unauthorized changes. "It's not accepting the override," Marina reported, fighting rising panic. "The protocol is locked." "There's another way." Leon's voice crackled through the comm. "But it's risky. You'll need to trigger a controlled system reset by manually releasing the pressure regulators for the server room itself. That would expose the servers to rapid pressure changes." Marina realized. "It could damage them." "Yes, but it would force an emergency shutdown and reset. When the system reboots, the aberrant protocol will be purged." Marina checked her suit's status indicator. The extreme pressure was already affecting its integrity. She had less than 5 minutes before it would begin to fail. "Tell me what to do," she said grimly. Following Leon's instructions, Marina located the manual pressure regulation valves. They were designed for emergency maintenance, never intended to be used while the chamber was pressurized. Turning them would require all her strength. As she struggled with the first valve, a violent shudder ran through the city. Through her comm, she could hear alarms and shouting from the control room. "What's happening?" she demanded. "Multiple modules are reporting critical pressure failures," Isohara's voice replied. "We're losing structural integrity throughout the northern and eastern sections." Marina redoubled her efforts, straining against the unyielding valve. Slowly, agonizingly, it began to turn. As it did, a hissing sound filled the chamber, pressure being released in a controlled but rapid manner. The effect on her suit was immediate. The external pressure decreased, allowing her more freedom of movement. She quickly moved to the second and third valves, opening them in the sequence Leon had specified. The server banks emitted warning tones as their environment changed rapidly, emergency systems activating to protect the sensitive equipment. "System is initiating emergency shutdown," Leon reported excitedly. "It's working!" Marina had just reached the final valve when disaster struck. The rapid pressure changes had weakened a section of the chamber wall. With a terrible groaning sound, a seam split, allowing pressurized water to spray into the room. "Marina, get out now!" Leon shouted over the comm. "The chamber is breaching!" "Almost done," she gasped, fighting against the spray of water to turn the final valve. The freezing seawater struck her suit with incredible force, nearly knocking her off her feet. With a final surge of effort, she completed the sequence. The server banks went dark as the emergency shutdown activated. The pressure alarms throughout New Aqualis fell silent. "It's done," she reported, turning toward the exit. But the breach was worsening, the stream of water becoming a torrent. The path to the airlock was now blocked by the incoming ocean. Marina searched desperately for another exit. There, an emergency evacuation tube designed for server components. It was small, barely large enough for a person in a pressure suit, but it was her only chance. "I can't reach the airlock," she reported, forcing her voice to remain calm. "I'm using the maintenance evacuation tube." "Marina, wait!" Leon began, but she was already moving. The tube was designed for one-way travel, a last resort for technicians trapped during a breach. Marina squeezed inside and activated the emergency release. The tube sealed behind her and then launched her through a narrow channel running between the city's structural elements. The journey was violent and disorienting. Marina was propelled through the tube by a combination of pressure differential and mechanical assistance, unable to control her movement or see where she was going. Her suit's integrity warnings flashed continuously as the pressure fluctuated wildly. After what seemed like an eternity, she was ejected into one of the city's maintenance bays. Emergency personnel were waiting. Having been alerted by the evacuation tube's activation, they quickly helped her remove the damaged pressure suit and administered oxygen. "The system?" she asked as soon as she could speak. "Reset complete," Leon confirmed, rushing to her side. "The rogue protocols have been purged. Affected modules are stabilizing." Over the next hours, the full extent of the crisis became clear. Several outer modules had suffered significant damage, but thanks to the emergency protocols, no lives had been lost. The evacuated residents were safe in the central shelters, shaken but unharmed. Marina, treated for pressure-related injuries and exhaustion, found herself summoned to an emergency council meeting. Representatives from all sections of New Aqualis had gathered, along with Director Isohara and the corporate executives who had arrived from the surface. The atmosphere was tense as Marina entered. She noted the divide in the room. Abyss-Tech personnel on one side, independent researchers and resident representatives on the other. Isohara stood when Marina entered, her expression unreadable. "Dr. Tran," she began formally, "the Council has reviewed the evidence you and Engineer Patel collected. The automated system's malfunction has been confirmed, as has the original authorization for the relocation protocol." Marina remained silent, waiting. "Abyss-Tech headquarters has suspended the Phase 2 expansion pending a full investigation," Isohara continued. "I have been recalled to the surface for consultation." Marina understood the corporate euphemism for what it was. Isohara was being held responsible for the public relations disaster, if not the ethical breach itself. "The Council has voted to establish an independent oversight committee for all future operations in New Aqualis." One of the resident representatives announced, "We believe corporate interests must be balanced with resident safety and autonomy." Marina looked around the room, seeing determination in the faces of the independent representatives. Something fundamental had shifted in New Aqualis. The crisis had forced a reckoning with the power dynamics that had governed the underwater city since its founding. In the weeks that followed, New Aqualis underwent significant changes. The damaged modules were properly repaired, with transparent reporting on all safety measures. The proposed relocation was replaced with a collaborative expansion plan developed with resident input. Most significantly, Abyss-Tech's exclusive control over the city's operations was replaced with a joint governance structure. Marina, still recovering from her injuries, found herself appointed as ambassador for sustainable underwater habitation. Other cities were being planned, and her experience with both the technical and ethical challenges would be invaluable. On the day before she was to depart for a surface conference, Marina stood in the central observation dome, watching the ocean life that had adapted to their presence. Schools of fish darted between artificial coral structures, and larger creatures occasionally passed by, regarding the human habitat with what almost seemed like curiosity. "It's still beautiful, isn't it?" Leon said, joining her at the viewport. "Even after everything." "Maybe more so," Marina replied. "We've been given a second chance to do this right." "The new Oversight Committee approved my proposal for adaptive growth," Leon told her excitedly. "Instead of rigid expansion, we'll build modules that can be reconfigured as needs change. No more forcing people to relocate." Marina smiled. "And the Ocean Research Program?" "Fully funded. Dr. Cruz is already assembling her team. We're going to learn to live with the ocean, not just in it." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the play of light through the water. New Aqualis had survived its first major crisis, emerging stronger and more balanced. Above them, the world continued to change as rising waters claimed more land. But here, beneath the waves, humanity had found not just refuge but a new beginning. "Do you think we'll succeed?" Leon asked finally. "Will underwater cities become humanity's future?" Marina considered the question carefully. "I think we've learned that technology alone isn't enough. We need ethics, transparency, cooperation. If we remember the lessons from what happened here, then yes, I believe we can build something that lasts." As if in response to her words, a large manta ray glided majestically past the dome, its wingspan spanning nearly the full height of the viewport. It circled once, as if in acknowledgement, before disappearing into the blue depths. "Our relationship with the ocean is just beginning," Marina said softly. "We have so much still to learn." The light shifted as New Aqualis adjusted its day cycle, mimicking the sunset that would be occurring on the distant surface. Throughout the city, residents were adapting to their new reality, not just surviving underwater, but truly living there, creating a community that honored both human needs and the ocean environment that surrounded them. For Marina, watching the shadows of fish play across the dome, it felt like witnessing the dawn of a new era, humanity's next evolutionary step. Not a retreat from the rising waters, but an embrace of them. Not the end of an old world, but the beginning of a new one.